And now here's part 2 of our episode.
Okay, Maddie, you almost like crawled through the screen and attacked me when I tried to stop you from talking. So please tell us why is this a standout track?
Okay, so I don't like to have favorites, but it is the best song. It is amazing and it's wonderful. And there are so many moments in Lempicka that when I was preparing for this conversation and thinking about why I wanted to be on the show, that I couldn't come up with a better word for this, but they're like cueable moments. Like you can, and maybe it's because of who I am, but right, you can see the light, what the lights should be doing in that moment. You can see what the choreography should be doing. These beautiful, beautiful buttons and overlaps, and they play with the audio, right? Like they make her sound really far away and they bring her back in, and there's, this cadence. I mean, it's just all these really moments where you can visualize a show that you may have never even seen, right? But you can see what's happening. And that 1 minute mark of Don't Bet Your Heart, where it's like, is just spectacular. And what she is saying, and both the character, yes, prostitute with a heart of gold, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, that's not quite really who she is anyways. But this, I wrote this morning. I was like, and it alludes to Take Back Your Mink. And I was like, yes, it does. Good job, me. It's coming from plan and design, which is right. Like, so in the show, she's talking about how you plan out a painting, and she's kind of doing this almost a meditation as she's leaving the art studio, and she says, we do not control the world. We control one flat rectangular of canvas. And she keeps saying canvas, pigment, plan, and design. And she leaves the studio, and basically she almost gets hit by her car. And then there's this big, huge, amazing number in the street with Rafaela for Don't Bet Your Heart. So it goes from this like very like, I'm planned, I'm thinking about it, I'm so singular, and I'm like focused, to literally the whole world kind of opening up in front of her, both sexuality wise, music wise, person, right? It all opens up with seeing Rafaela with this spectacular moment on stage. The tempo changes, the style of music. We haven't seen that before in the show yet. And this is like so low on the list of amazing things. And I'm sure 100% it was on purpose. But if you just get in your car and you start at the overture, your voice is warmed up by the time you get to Don't Bet Your Heart, which is very convenient for me as a person who does not warm up until she gets in the car and starts singing. So that's excellent as well. And then coming out of Don't Bet Your Heart into I Will Paint Her, right? Like it is the most amazing, spectacular way to be like, oh my God, I saw this beautiful person and I have to paint her.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, that's not what she's actually going to say. And then she's like, no, I'm going to paint her.
Right.
And that's another one of those so true to life moments, right? When you see the person that ends up being your person, where there is a moment where you're like, that I connect with that person about so much more than, I don't know, whatever it is you're talking about.
Yeah. I like those moments when characters lie in songs and musicals too. Like there's this line in Don't Bet Your Heart of always be ready to walk away. I'm like, you don't mean that. You're like, you're trying to convince yourself, right? Because what you want is to feel like you could just never walk away, right? Like you'd have to stay at the table no matter what. Exactly like you were saying with the shoes scattered all around the house, right? You want to, like, my chips are all in and there's no way I'm leaving this table.
Yeah, and then it means so much more later, right? When Rafaela says, leave him, like, come with me. I'm done for. And her lines and speed of like, you stole my soul, I can't let go, give back my life, give back the time I didn't know you. That whole part in speed just makes me just like weep and weep and weep, right? Of that heartbreak. And to have this 100% realistic breakup song right? Like other breakup songs, okay, they're all right, fine.
Yeah.
But like that feeling of like, I can't, I just have to erase this whole part, which of course is not true, right? Like you don't actually want to do that, but in that moment when there is that kind of heartbreak, whether it's a breakup or a loss, it's that feeling of I can't bear this. I can't bear this anymore. I want to go back to a time where I didn't know you and I need to literally just back up.
I must admit, when I first started listening to the soundtrack, I wasn't sure what I was in for, because so we haven't really talked much about it musically yet. We've talked primarily about like lyrics and story, and I mean the overture is like very electronic, and there it feels like there's a lot of electronic instrumentation that comes throughout. That sort of I mean the composer that came to mind was like Dave Malloy, talking about like Natasha Pierre or Great Comet of 1812. Like it's sort of like this, it feels like there's a very eclectic style throughout, which for a period piece, like I sort of never knew whatever song comes up, I wasn't quite sure what style it was going to sit in. Are there other musicals out there that this music reminds you of?
Oh yeah. I know.
That makes sense.
That's part of the reason why I think it's so great. And my knowledge of musicals is heavily in the pre-1965 category.
Okay.
And then like a splattering of more recent things, and mostly of the most recent history. But that's part of the reason why it's so great too, is that it does feel like the song styles are written so specifically for the characters and not necessarily we're doing a musical, right? Like it follows the golden rule of American musicals, right? People sing when the emotions are so high, you can't just speak it and you have to sing it. It follows those, but in a way that feels so much more authentic. I can't think of any other. I'm not saying there isn't one, but I think it's awesome.
Maybe we should transition now into we gave you a task, Madelaine, and we asked you to nominate an album for us that was quote unquote perfect, and we didn't define that term for you. So we would be interested in knowing a little peek behind the curtain to what were some of the standards that you were using to assess what you might consider a quote unquote perfect album.
Okay, so I racked my brain for other musical albums, not necessarily shows, but albums that I also would be like, this is a perfect album. And I like a lot of things, and don't like to really say one thing is my very top, whatever.
Yeah.
That was very poorly worded. Sorry. So the like perfect musical albums that I was thinking of are Damn Yankees, Pippin, Big River, Pajama Game, Matilda, Chicago, and Secret Garden.
Hell yeah.
Just a few.
Just a few. And as I said, again, albums, not shows. So based on that, it is the things that you really, the songs you connect with, more than one, that you're really connecting with these multiple characters, that you can sing on the playground, that you know, they have some upbeat ones, maybe a slow one you skip most of the time. But these songs that feel like you could see yourself in and sing out in the real world, because they are the emotions you're feeling at that juncture.
You say good album, not necessarily good show. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, there are some problems in some of these shows.
I guess. But I guess so you referenced a song from Pippin earlier that like is not the greatest. Why is it still a good album if the song like gets to you?
Oh, because Because there are annoying people in the world.
Okay.
Okay.
More. Feed us baby birds over here. What do you mean by that?
Because you can have a beautiful, perfect day, but still have been annoyed by the person in front of you in line at the grocery store or whatever. So I'm looking at these as a collective, not necessarily each individual song is perfect.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I think that's sort of what I was thinking of, is that the collection, because they're not a band album, they're not a singer album, where if they don't like the song, right, they can just be like, we'll just drop this and we'll change it and we'll do it on the next one. These are all part of the show, so they all have to be included. Yeah. So for me, that's like, there's a song or two in Lempicka that aren't my favorite songs in the whole world, but I'm trying to think of it as the collection of the whole.
And so it's greater than the sum of its parts.
Well, yeah, if you want to really, really succinct and say it like that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, well, because it's making me think of that classic Talking Heads line of heaven is a place where nothing ever happens, right? If everything was perfect throughout your whole day, and if your life was constant bliss, then nothing would ever happen, right? There would be no contrast in your experience to indicate some feeling of joy that is different from just your baseline existence.
Yeah.
Is that am I invoking maybe an idea of how you're saying that the contrast that is maybe in the deficiencies, if we can use that kind of harsh term, the deficiencies of some of these pieces are actually what makes them perfect in your mind?
Yeah, I think that's true. And also, if you pull out a song that Corner of the Sky, My Corner of the Sky is that's a fine song, but it's not necessarily what you wanted the character to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think Broadway does not always reward nuance or complexity. And that may ultimately be an explanation for, I'm sure, every musical that makes it to Broadway has imperfections, but I also think that sometimes people don't want to think too much when they go to Broadway. And I think that that may have been something about the show that, I don't know. I didn't get to see it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
If we only focus on the people that are paying for things now, and we don't keep an eye to the future, we won't be here in the future. So if we're only making shows, Broadway, off-Broadway, regional, whatever, that are only looking at the people that can currently shell out $200 for a show, we will not have theater in the future. We will all just be seeing Fiddler and Annie and I don't know what else a million times over.
Yeah.
We have to be looking at we have to be cultivating all of this love, all of these things, and not necessarily with their money right now, so that when they are adults and older and have money and do whatever, that they exist.
Hear, hear.
I feel like that's a good place to start moving toward our deliberation. I don't think I could say anything.
I don't think I could either.
Maddie dropped the mic.
I think Madeleine's got to be our first guest on the theater podcast. All right, Michael, does that mean? Am I hearing you correctly that it's time for the?
I don't have the sound, Tyler. We're not recording in.
Oh, that's right. Shit. We don't have that. We don't have our sound effect. It's time for the deliberation phase, though, I guess, right?
Done. Yeah.
Done.
Yes.
Oh, Madeleine, we're getting sound effects. We're getting all sorts of stuff. It's coming in.
Just
coming
you wait.
in hot.
Next season.
Just you wait. Yeah. Do you want to start deliberating or me, Michael?
Yeah. I've lost the exact moment where things clicked for me. It was like midway through our conversation where something you were talking about made me think about the fact that I'm not a huge musical theater person, but I was thinking about how the one thing that I do know is that when Sondheim came around, he did something different from everybody else in the sense that I feel like his shows kind of magnify the small, like they sort of take the intimate and they make it important, and his characters sort of like dissect things, and you hear their thoughts, and when they sing, they're sharing their thoughts, and they're really complex, and you ride the whole emotional journey within like a 4-minute song essentially. But he takes the small and sort of magnifies it. That's my impression of it anyway. And something you were saying talked about how, I think it was talking when you were talking about how these are how people actually have relationships. Like, it's like, man, I wish you would learn how to, fill the dishwasher correctly. Also, I still love you. And like, we're going to take over the world together. Yeah. And I think that is something the show and the music in the show does well, is it also kind of takes a small thing. It doesn't magnify it in the same way that Sondheim does, but it does sort of make it epic. And I mean that also in sort of the like theater terms, like very Brechtian, and I know Meyerhold was before Brecht, but again, this is not a theater podcast, so I'm not going to go into that. But
it is sometimes.
It is sometimes, but that is something. I think that's the thing that really sold it for me, was when the invocation of filling the dishwasher properly was the moment for me. Tyler, what about you?
Yeah, it was similar for me here, because I think you zeroed us in. You zeroed us in on the core power of this, which is the lyrics, right? It's the lyrics of this show that may give it its value. And I think a lot of times we especially when we're talking about non-musical theater albums, we talk to people who say, well, I kind of connect to the music first, and then I get to the lyrics later. But with musical theater, that's flipped on its head a little bit, right? Because just for the reason you're saying, there's a narrative that must be served. There's a narrative that has to make sense. And even if there's a clunker of a song, or a song that maybe doesn't really fit within your picture of what you want these characters to do, it is ultimately in service of this narrative. That is the core, that's the necessity of musical theater, I would argue. And I think that's what I hear you arguing. So I think when you're talking about how if there's design elements or staging elements to a production, or performances that maybe feel like they are not satisfactory to an audience member, any audience member, whether they're a professional theater critic or not, when you zero in on like what are these people actually saying to each other, what are the relationships that they're trying to navigate, and if those are effective, it's still going to be worth coming back to, and it's still going to be a piece that means something and can mean something to a person who loves theater and a person who loves music. So I think that was probably where I got it, and I just really love the idea. I really love the idea that we hope that this could have a different life at some point, right? Like, even though this first instance of it on Broadway at the highest level maybe didn't come to the fruition that the theater makers would have wanted. I don't know them, I wouldn't know. But it's exciting to think about what's the next version of this with these songs that are so effective. What kind of life could they have? And I think those were all strong points in this case's favor. But I think I'm going to have to put it to Michael this time. Madelaine put up a hell of a case and came prepared. We love it when people come prepared. And I think we've got enough information now to make a determination. So, Michael, tell us. You've heard the case Madelaine made. You've listened to the album. Is the original Broadway cast recording of Lempicka a perfect album? Does it go to 11?
I believe it most certainly does. I wish I knew how to say 11 in Polish, but I can't.
Huzzah! Ding,
well,
ding,
great.
Ding, ding, ding.
Well, Maddie, or Madelaine, as the description is saying, thank you so much for bringing this to us and for engaging us in this fine conversation on a lovely late Sunday morning. Well, I guess now it's afternoon at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Maddie.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really glad to do it. And when you do your theater one, or you want to dive deep into the pajama game, I'm here for you.
You gave us such great options for musicals to talk about, and it's not the first musical we've talked about, but I think this is definitely the most like intriguing, because we talked about Company, and like those are a little bit more in concrete. This one's new, it's fresh, there's lots to be investigated.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, dear listeners, if you're not already following us on the social medias, go do that. And, you know, like, just make sure you're following our show on whatever platform you're listening to us on, because we're just 2 episodes away from our 100th episode.
Yeah.
And we got some big plans, y'all. Like, it's gonna be epic. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. Have a good week.
Bye.